There was once a small village on 7 hills beside a quiet river. No one knew that this place, poor, rough, and unknown, would one day rule the world. From the blood of brothers came a legend. From the ashes of war came a republic. And from that republic rose an empire, stronger, prouder, and more powerful than any before it. This is not just the story of battles and kings. It's the story of ambition, loyalty, and destiny. A story that shaped the world we live in today. This is the rise of the Roman Empire. Welcome to our journey through time, where we'll uncover how a small city of farmers became the heart of civilization. Stay with us as we walk through the legends, the wars, the glory, and the fall of the greatest empire in history, Rome.
Part 1. The Beginning of Rome, Legend and Truth. Long before empires and legions, before marble temples and grand battles, there was only a stretch of wild land in the middle of the Italian peninsula. This land was surrounded by 7 hills and cut through by a calm river called the Tiber. It was here that a small group of farmers and shepherds would plant the seed of a civilization that would one day rule the known world. But Rome's story, like many great civilizations, begins with a legend. According to ancient tales, a princess named Rhea Silvia, a descendant of the Trojan hero Aeneas, gave birth to twin boys, Romulus and Remus. Their father was said to be Mars, the god of war. But the jealous king, who feared the prophecy of their birth, ordered the infants to be drowned in the river. The basket carrying the twins floated gently downstream until it came to rest under a fig tree at the base of the Palatine Hill. There, a she-wolf, strong, fierce, and motherly, found them and nursed them until a shepherd named Faustulus discovered the boys and raised them as his own. As the twins grew, so did their courage and strength. They became leaders of men, driven by a destiny they could not yet see. One day, they decided to build a city where the wolf had saved them. But a bitter argument rose between the brothers over who would rule it, Romulus on the Palatine Hill or Remus on the Aventine Hill. The quarrel ended in tragedy when Romulus struck down his brother. With tears in his eyes, he named the city after himself, Rome. Legend says this happened in 753 BCE, the day the Eternal City was born. But beyond the myths, historians have found real evidence of small Latin villages that existed around that time, slowly merging together on the 7 hills. These early settlers farmed the land, herded cattle, and traded with neighboring tribes. They learned from the Etruscans, a powerful civilization to the north, who taught them how to build roads, temples, and walls. They also absorbed the Greek alphabet and culture, shaping the early Roman religion and lifestyle. In the beginning, Rome was ruled by kings. Some were wise, some cruel, but each left their mark. Numa Pompilius brought religion and peace. Servius Tullius created early laws and city defenses. But the last king, Tarquinius Superbus, was a tyrant. His arrogance and violence led to rebellion. In 509 BCE, the Romans rose up, overthrew him, and swore they would never again bow to a king. That oath marked a new era, the Roman Republic, a government led by the people and for the people. From this foundation, Rome would begin its long climb toward greatness. Part 2. The Roman Republic,
power, order, and expansion. The fall of the monarchy didn't bring peace overnight. Rome was now free, but freedom came with confusion. The people had to build a system that could keep order, prevent tyranny, and still allow progress. The Romans were practical and disciplined. They created a system where 2 consuls were elected each year to lead the army and the state. These consuls shared power so that no single man could become too strong. Behind them stood the Senate, made up of the most experienced and wealthy citizens who guided laws and foreign policy. At first, this system favored the rich patricians, while the common plebeians had little say. But the plebeians were the backbone of the army, the workers, the builders. When they refused to fight and protest, the patricians had no choice but to listen. Thus began the conflict of the orders, a long struggle for equality. Through persistence, the plebeians won important rights, the creation of tribunes who could veto unfair laws, and the publication of the 12 tablets, Rome's first written laws. These tablets were displayed in the forum so every citizen knew the rules that governed them. For the first time, justice was not just for the rich, it was for all Romans. As Rome stabilized, it turned its eyes outward. Surrounded by rival tribes, the Etruscans, Sabines, Volscians, and Samnites, Rome fought tirelessly to defend and expand its territory. The Roman army became a symbol of discipline and innovation. Soldiers trained in tight formations, learning to build camps, roads, and fortifications wherever they went. Their loyalty was not to gold or glory, but to Rome itself. Through war and diplomacy, Rome united the Italian peninsula by 265 BCE. Yet the city's success also drew the attention and envy of others. Across the Mediterranean, another great power watched: Carthage, the queen of the seas, whose wealth came from trade and colonies. 2 giants now stood face to face, and their collision would change history.
Part 3. The Punic Wars, Rome's fight for the Mediterranean. The Punic Wars between Rome and Carthage lasted over 100 years. They were not just wars for territory, they were battles for survival, for dominance, and for destiny itself. The First Punic War, 264 to 41 BCE, began in Sicily, a rich island both sides wanted to control. Carthage was a naval power. Rome had almost no ships, but the Romans were quick learners. They built hundreds of warships, modeled after a captured Carthaginian vessel, and invented the corvus, a boarding bridge that allowed Roman soldiers to fight at sea as if they were on land. After 23 years of struggle, Rome finally won. Sicily became Rome's first province. But victory was costly, and prideful Carthage swore revenge. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BCE, became one of the most famous conflicts in history, thanks to one man, Hannibal Barca. Born into a Carthaginian noble family, Hannibal hated Rome from childhood. When he became general, he promised his father he would destroy their enemy. In a daring move, Hannibal led his army, including 37 war elephants, across the icy Alps mountains into Italy. It was a journey no one thought possible. Many soldiers and elephants died along the way, but those who survived shocked the world. Hannibal crushed Roman forces in 3 great battles: Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and Cannae, where nearly 50,000 Romans fell in a single day. Rome trembled, but it did not fall. Unlike other cities, it refused to surrender. It raised new armies and avoided direct battles with Hannibal, stretching the war over years. Rome's people endured starvation, fear, and loss, but their spirit never broke. A young Roman general, Publius Cornelius Scipio, later known as Scipio Africanus, decided to strike where Hannibal least expected, Carthage itself. Hannibal was forced to return home to defend his city. In 202 BCE, the 2 generals met at the Battle of Zama. Scipio's clever tactics defeated Hannibal, ending Carthage's dream of empire. Rome had won, and Carthage was broken, forced to pay tribute, give up its navy, and surrender its pride.
but Rome's hunger grew. In the Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BCE, the Romans returned, determined to erase their old rival forever. They destroyed Carthage brick by brick, killing or enslaving its people. The city was burned to ashes. With Carthage gone, Rome ruled the Western Mediterranean. Its power stretched from Spain to Greece, and its influence touched Africa and Asia Minor. The Republic was now the strongest force in the world. But as its borders expanded, something began to change inside Rome. Greed replaced duty, ambition replaced honor, and the same republic that had sworn to never have kings was now giving birth to men who wanted to rule as gods.
Part 4. The Fall of the Republic: Power, Greed, and Civil War. Rome was now the master of the world, but victory brought new problems. Gold and slaves flooded into the city. Wealthy generals and senators built palaces, while the poor crowded into narrow streets, hungry and hopeless. The spirit of unity that had built Rome began to break apart. The Senate was filled with corruption. Men fought not for Rome's glory, but for personal gain. Land that once belonged to farmers was taken by the rich, leaving veterans homeless. The plebeians who had once defended the Republic now felt betrayed. In this chaos, voices of change began to rise. Two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, stood for justice. They were tribunes of the people, brave and determined. Tiberius proposed to give land back to the poor, to rebuild Rome's strength through fairness. But the Senate, fearing loss of power, turned against him. He was killed in the streets by senators and their supporters. Years later, his brother Gaius met the same fate. Their blood marked the beginning of a dark time. Political violence had entered Roman life. Then came the generals, men of ambition and charisma. Gaius Marius, a self-made soldier, reformed the army. He allowed poor citizens to join, giving them pay and land in return for service. The soldiers' loyalty shifted, no longer to the Senate, but to their generals. Another powerful man, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, rose in opposition. Sulla marched his army into Rome, something unthinkable before, and declared himself dictator. He executed his enemies and filled the city with fear. Though he eventually retired, he had shown the world a deadly truth. Whoever controlled the army could control Rome. After Sulla's death, the Republic staggered on, but its heart was already sick. The gap between rich and poor widened. The provinces were restless. Pirates filled the seas. The old traditions that had once held Rome together were fading. Then a name appeared that would change everything: Gaius Julius Caesar.
Part 5. Julius Caesar, the Rise of a Conqueror. Julius Caesar was born into a noble family, but his path was filled with danger. During Sulla's rule, Caesar was targeted for his political connections and forced to flee. Yet he survived, returning later to Rome with ambition burning in his heart. He was charming, intelligent, and bold. Through speeches, alliances, and favors, he climbed the ladder of power. He formed the first triumvirate, a secret alliance with Pompey, the great general, and Crassus, the richest man in Rome. Together they ruled behind the scenes, sharing power among themselves. Caesar's opportunity for greatness came when he was sent to govern Gaul, modern France. For nearly a decade, he waged brilliant campaigns against powerful tribes. His victories at Alesia, Gergovia, and others made him a hero. He wrote detailed accounts of his battles, sending them to Rome to shape his image as a man of destiny. But back in Rome, fear grew. The Senate and Pompey began to see Caesar not as a servant of the state, but as a threat. They ordered him to return to Rome and give up his army. Instead, Caesar made a choice that changed history forever. In 49 BCE, he crossed the small river Rubicon, leading his loyal legions towards Rome. It was an act of rebellion, a declaration of civil war. "The die is cast," Caesar said, as he marched south. Pompey fled to Greece. Caesar pursued him, defeating his forces at the Battle of Pharsalus. Pompey escaped to Egypt, but was killed there by local rulers hoping to please Caesar. Instead of gratitude, Caesar was filled with sorrow. He wept for his old ally and rival. In Egypt, Caesar met Cleopatra, the young and intelligent queen. Their alliance was both political and romantic. Together, they restored her throne and formed a bond that would echo through time. When Caesar returned to Rome, he was unstoppable. He was named dictator for life, a title that carried both honor and danger. He began great reforms, reducing debt, expanding citizenship, improving the calendar, creating the Julian calendar. The people loved him, but the Senate feared that Rome was once again falling into the hands of a king. And so, on the Ides of March, March 15, 44 BCE, a group of senators, including his friend Brutus, surrounded him in the Senate house and stabbed him to death. As he fell, his final words were said to be, "Et tu, Brutus," or "You too, Brutus." The Republic had killed its greatest leader, but in doing so, sealed its own fate.
Part 6. The Rise of Augustus, from Chaos to Order. Caesar's death did not save the Republic. It destroyed it. Rome fell into another wave of civil wars. The assassins fled, but they could not escape the chaos they had unleashed. From the ashes rose a new generation of leaders. Caesar's loyal general Mark Antony, his friend Lepidus, and his adopted heir, a young man named Octavian, formed the Second Triumvirate. Together, they hunted Caesar's killers and defeated them at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE. But peace did not last. Power, as always, could not be shared. Antony fell in love with Cleopatra, the queen of Egypt. Together, they dreamed of ruling East and West, an empire of their own. This alliance alarmed Rome. Many saw Antony as a traitor under the spell of the Egyptian queen. Octavian, calm but ruthless, used this fear to his advantage. He declared war, not on Antony, but on Cleopatra herself. In 31 BCE, their fleets met at the Battle of Actium. Octavian's forces triumphed. Antony and Cleopatra fled back to Egypt, where, facing defeat, they both took their own lives. Now Octavian stood alone as master of the Roman world. He knew Rome was weary of war and chaos, so instead of calling himself king, he chose a new title, princeps, meaning first citizen. Later, he became known as Augustus, the revered one. It was a clever disguise. Behind the mask of the Republic, he held the full power of an emperor. Under Augustus, Rome entered an age of peace and prosperity known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Roads stretched across continents, trade flourished, and art, literature, and architecture reached new heights. Poets like Virgil, Ovid, and Horace celebrated Rome's glory in their works. Temples, theaters, and monuments rose across the empire. The Forum of Augustus, the Ara Pacis, Altar of Peace, and countless roads and bridges stood as symbols of Rome's greatness. Augustus created a professional army and established a postal system, fire brigades, and a standing navy. He ruled with wisdom and subtlety, knowing when to show power and when to hide it. Rome, once torn apart by ambition, was now united, but at the cost of freedom. The Republic was gone. The Empire had begun.
Part 7. The Pax Romana, the Golden Age of Rome. Under Augustus and his successors, Rome reached the height of its power. For more than 200 years, the empire enjoyed peace, a rare thing in history. Roads and trade routes connected lands from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria. The Mediterranean became a Roman lake, Mare Nostrum, our sea. Cities were built in Roman style, with baths, forums, and amphitheaters. The Roman law, language, and culture spread everywhere. Latin became the common tongue,
shaping future European languages. The emperors after Augustus carried his legacy, some wisely, some foolishly. Tiberius, his stepson, was cautious but suspicious. Caligula brought madness and terror. Claudius expanded the empire into Britain. Nero, cruel and artistic, became infamous for tyranny and excess. Yet, even through their flaws, Rome's system held strong. The empire was more than soldiers and senators. It was people. Merchants, farmers, artisans, slaves, all living under the same laws, using the same coins, praying to the same gods. The great cities of the empire buzzed with life, markets filled with spices from India, silk from China, gold from Africa. The Colosseum rose as a marvel of engineering, built to entertain thousands with gladiator games, wild beasts, and spectacles of victory. Though brutal, these games reflected Rome's belief in strength and courage. Art and architecture flourished. Roman builders perfected the use of concrete, allowing them to construct massive structures like aqueducts, baths, and domes. The Pantheon, with its great circular roof, still stands as a symbol of Roman genius. Education spread. Philosophy, law, and literature became parts of daily life. Roman citizens could travel safely across vast distances, protected by the legions. The empire, once built through war, now thrived through order. But beneath this golden peace, cracks were forming. Political rivalries, moral decay, and pressure at the borders. The empire was growing too vast, too heavy to control, and soon the light of Pax Romana would begin to fade.
Part 8. The Shadows of Power, Corruption and Decline. The glory of Rome was unmatched, but power has a way of turning even giants fragile. After centuries of strength, the empire began to show signs of weakness, small cracks that would one day break the marble. The emperors who followed the Golden Age were not always wise. Some were cruel, others lazy, and many were puppets of their armies. The throne no longer passed smoothly. It was often taken by blood or bribery. After Nero's death in 68 CE, chaos swept the empire. 4 men, Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian, fought to become emperor. This year of turmoil, known as the Year of the 4 Emperors, showed how fragile Rome had become. Finally, Vespasian restored order, founding the Flavian dynasty. He and his son Titus completed the Colosseum, celebrating Rome's strength once again. But even then, the cracks remained. The 5 good emperors that followed, Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius, brought a final wave of greatness. Under Trajan, Rome reached its largest size, stretching from Britain to the Persian Gulf. Hadrian built walls to defend the borders and traveled across his empire to strengthen unity. Under Marcus Aurelius, a philosopher king, Rome shined in wisdom, yet his death marked the end of an era. Then came his son, Commodus, arrogant and cruel, who cared more for gladiator games than governance. His madness dragged the empire into decline again. Wars at the borders grew constant. Germanic tribes, Parthians, and Persians tested Rome's strength. Inside, corruption spread through every level of government. Soldiers demanded higher pay, officials stole from the treasury, and emperors rose and fell with alarming speed. In the 3rd century, Rome suffered what historians now call the crisis of the 3rd century. In just 50 years, more than 20 emperors ruled, most dying by assassination or rebellion. Plagues, economic collapse, and invasions nearly tore the empire apart. For the first time, it seemed the eternal city might not last forever.
Part 9. The Division of the Empire. Constantine and the Christian Dawn. From the darkness rose reformers who tried to save what was left of Rome. One of them was Diocletian. He understood that the empire was too large for one man to rule, so he divided it into 2 halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, each with its own emperor and capital. Diocletian brought stability through strict laws and military strength, But his system of two rulers would later become a source of conflict instead of unity. After he retired, rivals fought for control once more. Out of this struggle emerged a leader unlike any before, Constantine the Great. Constantine was both a warrior and a visionary. In 312 CE, before a decisive battle, he reportedly saw a cross of light in the sky, with the words, "In this sign you shall conquer." Believing it to be a divine message, he ordered his soldiers to paint the Christian symbol on their shields, and won a stunning victory. The next year, he issued the Edict of Milan, granting freedom of religion to Christians across the empire. It was a turning point in world history, from persecution to acceptance. Constantine later built a new capital city on the site of ancient Byzantium, naming it Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. It became the heart of the Eastern Empire, rich, strategic, and enduring. Rome, the city, began to lose its central importance. The emperors now ruled from the east, and while Constantinople flourished, the western half of the empire weakened. Germanic tribes grew stronger and old enemies returned to Rome's borders. The light of Rome still burned, but it was flickering.
Part 10. The Fall of Rome, the End That Never Ended. By the 4th and 5th centuries, the Western Roman Empire was collapsing under its own weight. The economy was broken, the army was stretched thin, and political unity had vanished. The empire that once ruled the world now struggled to defend its own gates. Barbarian tribes, Visigoths, Vandals, Huns, and Ostrogoths poured across the borders. In 410 CE, the unthinkable happened. Rome was sacked by the Visigoth king Alaric. For the first time in nearly 800 years, the city fell to a foreign army. Panic and disbelief spread across the Roman world. How could the eternal city be conquered? Still, parts of the empire survived for a few more decades. Great generals like Aetius fought heroically to defend it, even defeating Attila the Hun, the scourge of God. But the damage was too deep. Finally, in 476 CE, the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustus, was overthrown by a Germanic leader named Odoacer. It was not a bloody conquest, but a quiet end, a whisper more than a roar. Historians mark that year as the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Yet in the East, Byzantine Rome, centered in Constantinople, continued to thrive for another 1,000 years, preserving Roman law, culture, and art. So, did Rome truly fall? In truth, it transformed. Rome's ideas lived on. Its laws shaped modern justice. Its architecture inspired future cities. Its language, Latin, became the root of Italian, Spanish, French, and more. Its dreams of order, unity, and civilization still echo in every government, every cathedral, every great building that rises toward the sky. Rome did not die. It became a spirit, woven into the heart of the Western world. Even today, when we walk on paved roads, debate in senates, or build arches and domes, we walk in Rome's shadow. The empire may be gone, but its soul remains eternal.